For years, Ecco the Dolphin occupied, in my imagination, a spot among the video game legends. These were video games, for whatever reason, inaccessible to me, usually with cult followings and an aura of magic about them. Now that I'm finally playing them, I can say that some have been a disappointment to me. Not that they're necessarily bad. Others are more valuable than gold. Ecco the Dolphin was one of these legends. Today it's available on Steam, Virtual Console, Xbox Live Arcade, and probably everything else you can imagine. I applaud Sega for keeping their old titles alive and available in the world of video games, where preservation remains such an issue. And so I was so excited to play the Sega 3D Classics version of Ecco on my 3DS. And I did! Boy, did I not realize what I was getting myself into. I recorded the footage for a full Ecco the Dolphin Let's Play, but I quickly realized that this wouldn't be worth watching. But I found Ecco very interesting, certainly interesting enough to talk about. I have never had more mixed feelings on any video game than I have on Ecco the Dolphin. Ecco the Dolphin was first released in 1992 for the Sega Mega Drive, also known as the Genesis. Unlike so many other major releases for the system, this game isn't Japanese, it's Hungarian, from now defunct developer Novatrade International. The creator is a man named Ed Annunziata. Apparently he sued Sega for ownership of Ecco the Dolphin a few years ago, but it was resolved in 2016. What was the resolution? I don't know. Just thought I'd share. The player controls a bottlenose dolphin named Ecco, navigating underwater levels. There's an assumption that this would be a kinda cute, silly video game. Look at Ecco poking his bottlenose up at you, and he has those stars on his head. It's great, it's cute. This is what's called misdirection. Aesthetically, Ecco distinguishes itself right away. The graphics are gorgeous, though I'm biased to favor 16-bit art and the wonders of the ocean. But the graphics are also pretty realistic. Take Sonic here. He looks so little like a hedgehog, I'm offended Sega wants us to take him for one. But Ecco? Ecco is not a cartoon dolphin. Draw a few stars on a real dolphin's forehead, and he would be identical to Ecco. There is a definite attempt at realism as far as appearances go, which definitely aged better here than it would have had this been from the early 3D period. The music is also fantastic, really distinguishes Ecco from other Mega Drive games. I'm not too familiar with many, but those I do know have grindy, high-speed action kind of music. Now take Ecco. Dreamy, otherworldly, slow, and even sad. Add to this music Ecco's ability to talk to the other dolphins, who speak with the grandiose simplicity and seriousness of characters straight out of an ancient epic, and we have a tonally special video game. I like how the text doesn't have any punctuation and is in all caps. Makes it feel more ancient somehow. Initially, Ecco swims around his home waters, splashing around, having a good time. This is also where the player learns the controls, and that, like a real dolphin, Ecco has to resurface for air periodically. Ecco can shoot sonar to get a map of the surrounding area, or to talk to the other dolphins. Oh, you want to see how high Ecco can jump? Sure, let's find out. There's the plot. Ecco's pod disappears abruptly and violently, and Ecco sets off to save them. Ecco the Dolphin is not cute and happy. It's grim, moody, and scary. Most video games try to spook you with dark corridors, zombies, and other overused scares. Ecco knows better. Ecco is lost and on his own. Nobody is there to be his friend or keep him company, and the ocean is full of horrible predators waiting to take a chunk out of him. This felt like a dolphin Watership Down to me. Dark, serious story, the vibe of a heroic epic, talking, traditionally cute animals. Most of the level design revolves around strange crystals called glyphs. Ecco can interact with these using his sonar, sometimes to receive messages somehow coded within them. Usually the glyphs come in two varieties, barrier glyphs and key glyphs. The barrier glyphs act to block Ecco's path. To move one, Ecco must first touch a key glyph. But be careful, since if Ecco goes a little bit off screen, they respawn! Of course they freaking do! These glyphs are actually an early sign that Ecco the Dolphin is more than meets the eye. Ecco the Dolphin is hard. Really hard. Ecco can only stay underwater for a very brief period of time before he needs to surface for air. There are enemies everywhere that Ecco initially can only hurt by ramming into them. A general safe assumption is that everything, everywhere, even if it doesn't make any sense, will kill him. Initially, I thought the level of difficulty was bearable, but pretty soon, I realized I couldn't go on. There are enemies everywhere. It's relentless. Never for a second is the player able to stay calm and savor the environment, the moody music, the isolation. Instead, mere survival is a constant struggle, nonetheless navigating underwater labyrinths. These damn leeches latch onto Ecco like chains, and you can't get loose without writhing around until it's too late to get air, or Ecco rams into some other enemy right there and dies. These pufferfish shoot out of nowhere to take a chunk out of Ecco, and the crabs, and the jumping spider crabs, and the trilobites later on. Naturally, all of the enemies can move through solid rock and coral and brick to kill Ecco that much more efficiently. You might think this sounds exciting. It's grueling. Imagine trying to walk through a beautiful garden maze, listening to Pink Floyd, enjoying the topiary statues and the pretty flowers in your isolation, but the whole time you're swarmed by hornets. Kinda ruins the whole experience, right? These levels are complex and require careful navigation to avoid the enemies and traps, learn the positions of more dangerous enemies, and move to the locations of key glyphs or missing dolphins or important items or whatever you're trying to do. So you need to be careful and take your time. But good luck doing that, because Ecco's oxygen is constantly ticking down. This clock makes every second count. You never have a moment to rest. Instead of appreciating the scenery or trying to learn your way around, you have to constantly barrel forward at top speed and pray you're not gonna crash into a shark. I thought Sonic was the fast-moving Mega Drive animal. No, Sonic goes fast because he can. Ecco does because he is constantly on the brink of death. Every time Ecco is hit, he emits this screeching sound. At first I thought it was horrifying, but since the player hears it every few seconds, it becomes annoying. Why doesn't Ecco attack them? His only attack is charging forward, but it's really imprecise and inevitably just puts him in harm's way. If Ecco saves another dolphin's family at the vents, they teach him to use his sonar as an attack. But since the player needs to press the sonar button and the charge forward button with just the right timing simultaneously, and a mistake pretty much means the enemy will hit you, it's pretty useless too. Still, here anything remotely helpful is a major benefit. Later on, when Ecco is deep underwater, he has to stop at air pockets to breathe instead of at the surface. Naturally, they're lined with spikes half the time, so when he shoots into them, since he's constantly rushing, he loses health. Look how fast this long player is going through these levels. That's because there's no choice. If he left all the deaths in his long play, this video would be hours and hours long. And these damn octopuses who swat at Ecco if he moves too fast. Look at this! Why did it swat? Did Ecco suddenly speed up, or is this just random? Why is the octopus this big? The biggest octopus is not going to be this big relative to an adult dolphin. There are parts where Ecco has to make huge jumps over the environment. At first, I thought there must be something wrong, since this looks impossible. But no, you can, through a lengthy process of trial and error, actually get Ecco to jump over these barriers. And the falling block puzzles, and the pushing block puzzles, and the blocks that slide around, crushing Ecco to death even if they only graze his tail. One-hit kills for these things. The health meter can go to hell. This horrible noise Ecco makes. Quit it, Ecco. Have some dignity. Don't forget the horrible starfish circle puzzles. There are these floating rings of starfish that, God knows why, destroy every enemy and obstacle in their path. Ecco can only move them by shooting his sonar at them, and it is easy to knock them into rocks since they go through solid obstacles like the enemies do, so that Ecco can't get them to where he needs them to be, and so now Ecco needs to resurface to get air, and oh yeah, the starfish teleport back to their starting position after a few seconds, so in addition to the time limit for Ecco's oxygen, there's a time limit for the starfish, and so he has to go down there, and all the enemies are relentless, and he has to get the starfish up there, like in that part where he has to get the starfish past the octopus who's swatting at him, and there's a rock falling down on him. And these damn enemies don't make any sense! Crabs don't attack dolphins! That's nonsense! Spider crabs aren't athletic jumping monsters! Why would they care about Ecco? And why is the trilobite more ferocious than a shark? And why is there a giant seahorse and it shoots babies at Ecco? Why is something as benign as a seahorse turned into a giant monster that attacks Ecco the dolphin? It's nonsense. It's just nonsense. Why are starfish so ferocious they kill a shark in seconds? So, sure, it's unfair, stressful, and infuriating, but at least there are no checkpoints. Some of these are long, complex levels, but you die once? Sorry, back to the beginning. Do everything over again. These days, the cliche is to compare any difficult video game to Dark Souls. If you want a good alternative, compare them to Ecco the Dolphin. Why is it so difficult? What were you thinking, Ed? Supposedly, the reason is that the team developing it didn't want the game to be completed too quickly. Did they playtest this? What were they thinking, the sadists? Remember that long play I mentioned earlier that cut out all the deaths? It's only about an hour. This kind of practice wasn't that uncommon back then. Today, the more common practice if you want to pad out a solid experience is filler, like using xanthan gum to turn a cup of mayonnaise into 5 pounds of mayonnaise-like slop. Either approach seems misguided, although for various reasons I doubt the mentality that video games need to be long will go away anytime soon. This is Ecco the Dolphin's fatal flaw. But wait, you may be saying, there are tons of hard games, and that's part of the experience. Sure, let's take Battletoads. There is a story in Battletoads, but it's a goofy, Saturday morning cartoon kind of story. The story is only for flavor. The focus is the challenging levels. Ecco, however, offers a much more creative story and aesthetic that obviously wishes to be experienced as a story on its own merits. Making Ecco the Dolphin challenging and stressful is not outrageous. It contributes enormously to the tone. Every movement gains a certain terror. Every new scene becomes threatening. Will there be a dolphin offering advice? Will this be the key glyph or the door glyph? Is there a shark in this tunnel? Where can I get my next breath of air? Will there be any fish left to eat? The high difficulty and constant state of assault put the player into an isolated, desperate, feverish frame of mind, exactly like Ecco. Take the open ocean. Sharks are assaulting Ecco from all directions as he swims alone through these open waters, desperately trying to stay alive. If only he had a pod, they could defend themselves, but on his own, Ecco is powerless, and every second another that he could breathe his last. That is effective. The later levels excellently capture how vast the gulfs of space separating Ecco from home are. It really feels like Ecco is cut off from everything comprehensible. It's a nice touch that, starting with the Marble Sea, the levels no longer have descriptions. How could they? Ecco knows nothing about these strange alien places. Trying to put the player into the mental sphere of a scared, confused animal is pretty extraordinary, especially for a 1992 Sega game. How many other video games have tried to pull that off? One? Combined with the music, the beautiful graphics, and the sad, dark story, it can result in a trance-like state. The whole experience feels both enlightening and scary. Or I assume it would if the difficulty wasn't too high to appreciate any of this. The problem is that the difficulty is so extreme that I imagine almost no one actually saw it through to the end back when this game was released. I'm honestly astonished that anyone did. Why would the developers create a whole story experience but hide it behind the most hair-pullingly frustrating, stressful, and tedious gameplay I've ever encountered? Developers sometimes walk a fine line between making a video game difficult to contribute to the tone and themes, and between making an impossible disaster. Some people really enjoy Ecco the Dolphin despite all this, and I understand why, but I assume they are a minority. The 3D Classics re-release of Ecco the Dolphin adds a special Super Dolphin mode. In this mode, Ecco is constantly sparkling and completely invincible to all enemies. Blocks can still kill him, though. This basically nerfs the whole game. Although the original is too hard, the solution is not to make Ecco invincible. The idea is that now the player can only focus on the puzzles, and given how infuriating some are, it doesn't totally eliminate the challenge, but it is extremely unsatisfying. Remember when I mentioned the open ocean? The level changes from a heart-pounding challenge to a joke! I want to experience the nervousness and anxiety, just not on the level of the original. Why not put in multiple difficulty levels or something? New Super Mario Bros. Wii and Donkey Kong Country Returns, among others, includes an optional feature called the Super Guide to clear levels if the player is struggling too much. Why not use the Super Dolphin mode more like that? The player can have their challenging level if they want, but if they just can't progress, then they don't have to give up on the game. Initially, I thought Super Dolphin mode could be toggled on and off, but nope, you either play the whole game in Super Dolphin mode, or none. Either you tear your hair out, or play a video game whose only challenge is enduring the tedium. And these goddamn jumps! This was not the solution for fixing the difficulty. Even if Ecco the Dolphin would only have been an hour or two, Novatrade International should have recognized that Ecco's strongest assets were the lonely, mournful mood, the great graphics, the psychedelic vibe, and the interesting story. Ecco the Dolphin should not be a test of endurance, it should be a tone piece. So what if it would have been short? There was no other experience like this on the market, a psychedelic cosmic horror dolphin adventure. Oh yeah, there is a proper story here. None of the other porpoises Ecco happens upon knows what happens to his pod. An orca in Medusa Bay suggests Ecco seek out the Big Blue. This is Ecco's only lead, and his only hope. Finally, despite kilometers of death between him and his goal, Ecco reaches the Arctic Ocean, or, as he knows it, the Ice Zone. Here, Ecco is in an environment totally alien to him. He no longer understands the language of the porpoises, and the, quote, hard water makes navigation deadly. That's a clever way of characterizing a dolphin's perception of ice. Ecco, cold and alone, sliding in and out of the water across glaciers, eventually finds the Big Blue. As it turns out, the Big Blue is a blue whale. I wasn't actually sure what to expect from the name. Ecco speaks to the Big Blue. Who explains that these violent storms occur every 500 years, although he doesn't know what happened to Ecco's pod, just that when these storms occur, all life vanishes from beneath the eye of the storm. so he suggests Ecco seek out the asterite, the oldest life form in the sea. The asterite is located in the deep water zone, and so Ecco sets out to find this. Trying to describe how profoundly grueling and demoralizing Ecco's trials are isn't for some YouTube video. It would take a master novelist. Maybe Conrad could do it, I don't know. Back in tropical waters, Ecco finds the asterite. I assumed the asterite would be some kind of sponge or other long-lived organism. Instead, it's a bunch of rotating spheres arranged in a double helix. Rather beautiful. The asterite remembers Ecco, and it says it can help him, but don't think Ecco's situation has improved. The asterite wants favors for favors. To the west is a sunken city called Atlantis. Its people built a machine and used it to travel in time. Use the machine to travel to the distant past before your kind existed. You will go back 55 million years. There you will find my missing globe. You must return it to me. Only then can I give you what you need to save your pod. Ecco swims to the Marble Sea, Atlantis. There, amidst the Hellenistic ruins, we get the big twist. Ecco discovers the remains of the library. Its information is not stored in books, but in the crystal glyphs like Ecco has been interacting with his whole adventure. The first glyph Ecco finds tells him something shocking, and which he presumably doesn't understand. We are losing a war with the planet Vortex. The Vortex come from a star system the Atlanteans called Cassandra. Millennia ago, their planet stopped producing enough food to support their population. Every 500 years, when their planet is aligned with Earth, they use some sort of weapon to harvest life from the oceans to feed themselves. Every subsequent harvest is bigger than the last. It doesn't take much thought to take the process to its logical conclusion. The Atlanteans have escaped into the distant past to avoid the vortex, but left their glyphs to guide a dolphin to stop them. The dolphin, of course, is Ecco.
As for why the Atlanteans chose a dolphin rather than a person, and as for why the glyphs usually obstruct Ecco's progress and don't help him in any way at all, I don't know. At this point, I'm just going to attribute it to Ed Annunziata being irrational.
From here, Ecco locates the time machine in the ruins. It still works. The Atlanteans prepared for this. Ecco activates it with his sonar and travels 55 million years into the past. Now there are not only vast gulfs of space between Ecco and his home, but vast gulfs of time as well. At first, the story, like I said, reminded me of Watership Down, but with dolphins. At this point, we've segued into something else entirely. The story of Atlantis is so totally false, and so many people believe it's real somehow anyway, that I'm always annoyed when media brings it up like this. Still, I can't say it doesn't suit the psychedelic vibe so much of this gives me, even though there aren't bright colors or classic rock music. The immense difficulty has another function: mystery. Some kids who played this never figured out there was something beyond the starting area, not knowing how to jump high enough to trigger the storm that sweeps Ecco's pod away. Imagine that they accidentally triggered this event. Then, confused and being a kid probably kind of scared, they travel to Medusa Bay through the newly opened passage and discover there's a whole adventure. But it's so impossibly difficult that they give up way before learning where the story would have taken them. Those few who pressed on, though, After months of struggle, they might get a little further, then a little further, until eventually discovering, hidden deep within this weird, impenetrable experience, a story about time travelers. Ecco is a special dolphin selected by the ancient Atlanteans, and aliens harvesting life from Earth for millennia. The difficulty then also contributed to Ecco's magic and mystery. Few learned the unexpected twists of what was actually going on, but this seems less like a deliberate design choice, and more because the whole thing was designed by a maniac who also doesn't know anything about how marine animals behave. Ahem. From here, Ecco endures the Jurassic and the difficulty ramps up to what I would call impossible. Yes, it is possible if someone completely dedicated many more hours of their life than it's worth. But the player isn't Ecco. The player isn't the one lost with no family trapped in the Jurassic, so the player really lacks the motive to press on that Ecco has. Though anybody who got this far back in the day wouldn't have been prepared to give up, I'm sure. I know I've already talked about this, but I gotta go back to the seahorse. Why does this giant seahorse give birth to baby ones to attack Ecco? Seahorses are tiny and totally inoffensive. Why would Ed turn one into a giant monster? How in the world does that make any sense? I don't even think there's evidence of seahorses existing as far back as the Jurassic. And I already complained about these trilobites being high-speed, deadly predators. Imagine if we were on land, and this game portrayed cows as ferocious, flesh-eating beasts. If this was a comedy, it might work, but would that be acceptable? And this garbage isn't acceptable either. Anyway, Ecco finds the ancient asteroid, who attacks him for some reason, because of course he does. Then Ecco gets the missing orb from it, travels back to his era, delivers the orb to the asteroid of his day, and then the asteroid gives Ecco the ability to breathe underwater and attack with his sonar. Not by charging forward and attacking with his sonar simultaneously, but just by shooting the sonar. That would be great if the game wasn't basically over. Just to pad things out some more, a number of the earlier stages repeat at this point. Thanks, Ed. For the finale, taking the asteroid's advice, Ecco travels back to the time machine. Then he travels back to before his pod was harvested, and lets himself be taken away with them. Somehow, Ecco survives the tube that sucks him and his pod away from the ocean, and enters the machine, presumably the Vortex spaceship. This unexpectedness, this bizarre mixture of dolphins and aliens, dolphins and sci-fi horror, creates a fascinating experience. When Ecco's journey began, this really isn't where you'd think he'd end up. Welcome to the Machine is the hardest level in any video game ever. There might be other levels that are just as hard, but none harder. There might be more trolley levels like in I Wanna Be the Guy, but that's all I'm saying. Minutes of forced scrolling, constant alien attacks, no clear path to take, trial and error gameplay, and if you die once, back to the beginning. This makes sense. Ecco is inside the Vortex meat grinder, though I'm not sure why the Vortex spawn themselves are entering to attack Ecco. But whether it makes sense, this is a video game made for people to enjoy, at least on some level. I don't have the energy to be angry anymore. Frankly, I'm beginning to think Ed and Annunziata might have had some problems. It was his personal decision to tweak each level until it was filled with so much bullshit any healthy person would give up. I'm sorry to cuss and make this review seem more unprofessional, but seriously, sometimes words like rubbish, nonsense, or wanton cruelty simply don't capture the needed severity. Supposedly, the inspirations for Ecco included a book about dolphin behavior, Pink Floyd, and John C. Lilly. Who, you ask, was John C. Lilly? A marine biologist and mystic. Among other things, he tried to teach dolphins English, tortured dolphins, and used LSD to talk to alien gods. Oh. Incidentally, Lilly claimed some of these aliens were in a company called Ecco, ECCO. I'm sure that's a coincidence. But you know what I am angry about? If by some miracle you got through the machine, Ecco fights the Vortex Queen, this giant scary vortex head. Pretty lazy design. But if she kills Ecco while the player is trying to figure out how to hurt her, back to the beginning of the level. That forced scrolling sequence that's just so grueling. All over again. This surreal horror story, surprisingly, has a happy ending. Ecco defeats the Vortex Queen, saves his pod, and triumphantly swims back through the tube to Earth. They swim around in their home waters in triumph, reunited at last. You earned it, Ecco. But we all know how the story really ended. Ecco killed the Vortex Queen, saving Earth, but his whole pod had already died in the tube and the machine. That's why we never see any of them. Ecco only got through because he had special powers. The rest were made into mincemeat. With the vortex and chaos and their planet no longer aligned with Earth, Ecco is stranded. He can't operate their advanced equipment anyway. Light years from home, cold and confused on a dying planet full of the decaying, hostile remains of an ancient civilization, Ecco dies alone. His corpse is promptly eaten by the dying vortex spawn. That happy ending is simply a dying hallucination, like in An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Yeah, there's some sequels and a reboot that complicate things with future advanced dolphin civilizations and who knows what else, but I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, there is only one Ecco the Dolphin. Great story, great music, great graphics, and full of progressive, interesting, and truly unique ideas. It's also torture. Complete torture. The UN may want to investigate Ed and the rest of his team at Nova Trade for crimes against humanity. I got through here only because Ecco was invincible and I had save states. Otherwise, this would never, ever be worth it. But wait, the Vortex were not the only twist. The Japanese version of Ecco the Dolphin has some differences. Mostly these are just extra polish. But one of these version differences turns Ecco the Dolphin into a different experience. Checkpoints! The glyphs are checkpoints now! This moves Ecco from impossible for a normal person to very challenging. I can't believe it! And in the battle with the Vortex Queen, if she eats Ecco, the player is taken to a shorter level called the Stomach, instead of being forced to suffer through Welcome to the Machine again. Why on earth would Nova Trade decide to screw over the English language market? The Sega CD version includes checkpoints too, but that's not the game I'm talking about here. It also has a completely original soundtrack and some more levels, though I don't think the music is as good. I assumed these differences were because Nova Trade faced a tough deadline and released Ecco to the US before the game was totally finished. But no! That's not true at all! Ecco the Dolphin came out in Japan on the same day as in the US! Ed, you maniac! What are you trying to say? That you despise the United States for its promotion of international capitalism? But I'm only joking, of course. I'm not making this video to insult Ed Annunziata or anything. He seems like a pretty nice guy from what I can find. You keep being you, Ed Annunziata. There is a good experience here at heart, but rather than accepting a truly unique short game with a great atmosphere and story, they decided to make an almost unplayable nightmare. What's so frustrating is that Ecco could be so much more accessible, with a few different difficulty levels for different players, say. We're one great ROM hack away from something wonderful instead of just interesting. It could even include the original game for the masochists. We're not doing this again. No, Ecco has been through enough, please. Oh no, And that's Ecco, a piece of horrible, awful garbage that happens to be a visionary work of genius.